Okay, so dry assemble of the gearbox output shaft, and you can see why I'm still not happy with this now. You can look in there. I don't know if that's going to focus up properly, but you can see that there's the speedo drive there, and you can see that that seal is definitely higher, so that the outer lip of the seal is not on the main bearing surface of the speedo drive. It's way below. In fact, it's probably worse than it was before. I can see that that O-ring is actually made no difference. You can see there's the outer lip of the seal. I can flick it quite easily. Miles away. There's something wrong there. Okay, so the latest thing now is I've assembled this now with two of the large spacers in. Previously I assembled it with one of the spacers in, and it just wasn't right. It was still too low. Now if we look at this now, this looks good. This is now well proud of, well, it's not well proud, but it's proud, and it looks right. And I've done loads of Guzzi gearboxes, and that's how they normally look, I think. So for some reason this gearbox is different, and I suspect what the cause of the problem is that I've replaced this with a high loading bearing, and I'm guessing that the inner race of the high loading bearing is not quite as wide as the standard race, and it's allowing the speedo drive and the spacer, the little shim and the O-ring to drop lower in, and that's what's causing the problem. I think swapping to that high loading bearing has been a mistake. I think that's actually what's caused the problem. Now the bike's ran for thousands of miles like that until it's torn up the seal, which is pretty good going really. Quite a lot of load on this guy. But I am now severely tempted to assemble this like this now with two of the heavy spacers in. Tell me why I shouldn't do that. I've even plugged the speedo drive in, the pinion, and check for its binding to make sure that I've shined the light down there to make sure that it looks right, and it actually looks better than it did before. So there's no binding there. That looks fine. I guess the proof of the pudding's in the eating really. I guess if we try it and it eats the pinion, then we've got a problem. But I'm guessing that's actually better position than it was before. I think that's actually now looking a lot more correct. Okay, the saga continues. On the last bit of fun and games I had with this, I was pretty convinced. Well, I wasn't convinced, but I was thinking that the bearing might have been wrong, and that the inner size of the bearing was a little tiny bit less, and therefore was screwing up the height of the stack and allowing the speedo drive to drop too low. So I've had a quick look in the trophy box, offerings to the Racing God box, and I found a whole pile of bearings. And now if I think about how many of these I've done, I've probably done at least 5 or 6 bikes, so, and I've never had this problem, so I can't really understand it. So anyway, I found a whole pile of bearings. Some of them are a little bit worse for wear than others. There's a good one. Okay, this is what happens to them if you don't replace them. Look at the state of that. I think this one, it's got no inner at all. This one came out of a Cali. I think it came out on the 1100 Cali, that the clutch wasn't adjusted right, and so it heated the box up, and just all the bearings walked in it. All the bearings came loose. It was a real nasty mess. I think that's where that one came from. Anyway, so I've measured this up. If I measure the knackered one, don't drop it on the floor. If I measure this one up, I get pretty much 20.5 millimeters, right? And if I measure up the nice new one, which I've just tapped out, it's extremely loose in the thing because they're held in by a retainer ring, so that they're not too bad a fit. If I just measure that, and I get, make that out, 20.5. So that bearing even if it's a little tiny bit out, it's not making up the 1.5mm I am out, so I just don't know what it is. The bearing face in there looks fine. I can see no reason why the bearing's not seating properly in there. The fact that it's held in by a retainer ring and that retainer ring goes incorrectly makes me think that the bearing's positioned right. I just don't really understand what's going on. I think it's having another cup of tea.